The huge metal dome of the testing arena shined under 3 different suns. Today was the most important day in the galactic calendar. The warrior trials would begin soon. Warriors from 14 different alien races stood in perfect lines. Some had scales that changed color. Others had metal skin that clicked when they moved. A few floated above the ground without touching it. They all looked strong and ready to fight. Corporal Jack Bishop stood at the end of the line. He was the only human there. His simple combat uniform looked plain next to the fancy alien armor. The other warriors kept looking at him and whispering. Most of them had never seen a human before. "Look at that one," said Zarek, a warrior made of living crystal. His voice sounded like glass breaking. "The humans sent that soft creature to compete with us? They must be joking." Jack heard the comment but kept his eyes forward. He had been through worse things than alien insults. Much worse. Ambassador Thora, a tall blue alien with 6 arms, floated to the center of the arena. She raised all her arms. For silence. The whispering stopped. "Welcome to the Galactic Warrior Trials," she said. Her voice echoed through the dome. "Today we will test your strength, your speed, and your will to survive. Only the best warriors will pass these tests." Jack shifted his weight from one foot to the other. His boots felt tight. The gravity on this planet was stronger than Earth's. Everything felt heavier here. "The humans are new to our council," Ambassador Thora continued. "This is their first time in our trials. Let us see what they can do." More whispers filled the arena. Jack caught words like weak and breakable and why bother. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. The first test would start soon. Jack had studied the videos from past trials. He knew what was coming. The aliens had better technology, stronger bodies, and natural armor. But Jack had something they didn't understand yet. He had been through hell and back on Earth. He had survived things that would kill most creatures. Burns, breaks, and bleeding were just part of the job for a human marine. A loud horn sounded. The arena floor began to change. Panels slid open. Walls rose from the ground. In minutes, the flat surface became a maze of obstacles and dangers. "The first trial tests your basic survival skills," Ambassador Thora announced. "You must cross the field while avoiding the plasma mines. Touch a mine and you will feel pain like never before. Fail to finish and you are out of the trials." The alien warriors moved to the starting line. Their armor hummed with power. Force fields flickered around some of them. Others grew extra limbs or changed their skin to match the arena floor. Jack checked his gear one last time. Standard combat armor, basic med kit, no fancy technology, no special powers, just training and determination. "Humans should not be here," Zarek said, moving next to Jack. "Your species is too fragile. You will not last 5 minutes." Jack looked at the crystal warrior. "We'll see." The starting signal flashed. All the warriors rushed forward. Jack stayed, back for a moment watching how the others moved. The plasma mines were hidden, but they gave off a faint heat signature. Jack had learned to spot them in training. He moved forward carefully, step by step. The other warriors were faster, but speed wasn't everything. Jack had patience. He had focus. Then it happened. A mine triggered near him. Not close enough to hit him directly, but close enough to spray him with plasma. The superheated energy cut through his armor like paper. It burned into his left arm. The pain was instant and intense. Jack's vision went white for a second. He heard gasps from the watching aliens. They expected him to scream, to fall, to give up. Instead, Jack looked at his arm. The burn was bad. 3rd degree at least. In any normal situation, he would need immediate medical care. But this wasn't a normal situation. Jack reached for his med kit with his good hand. The aliens watched in confusion as he began to treat his own wound. No panic, no drama, just quick, efficient action. "Impossible," someone whispered. Jack finished the basic treatment and kept moving. The trial had just begun, and he had a point to prove. Humans might be new to the galaxy, but they were far from weak. The real test was only starting. Jack moved through the maze of plasma mines. His burned arm throbbed with each step, but he kept going. The other warriors were far ahead. "Now, They used their shields and special armor to protect themselves from the mines. Jack had only his basic gear and his training. The crowd in the arena had gone quiet. They watched the human with new interest. Most injured warriors would have quit by now, but Jack kept moving forward, checking each step before he took it. Another mine exploded to his right. This time Jack was ready. He turned his body to take the blast on his armor instead of his skin. The impact knocked him sideways. His armor cracked and melted where the plasma hit. "Medical team, stand by," called one of the judges. "The human may need extraction." Jack heard the announcement. He looked up at the judge's box and shook his head. Then he did something that made the aliens gasp again. He pulled out his combat knife and cut away the melted armor plate. It fell to the ground with a clatter. The skin underneath was red and blistered. Another burn, not as bad as the first one. Jack sprayed it with wound sealant from his med kit. The chemical foam hardened quickly, creating a protective layer over the burn. "He's treating himself again," said Ambassador Zana, a tall reptilian alien. "While still in the trial. Remarkable." Zarek, the crystal warrior, had stopped to watch. His face showed confusion. "Why doesn't he stop? He's clearly damaged." "Maybe humans don't know when to quit," said another warrior. Jack heard their comments but didn't respond. He had work to do. The plasma mines were getting thicker now. This was the hardest part of the course. Most warriors relied on their technology to get through. Jack relied on his eyes and his instincts. He spotted the heat signatures of 3 mines ahead. They formed a triangle with no safe path through. Jack studied the pattern for a moment. Then he did something unexpected. He picked up a piece of his discarded armor and threw it at the middle mine. The explosion triggered all 3 mines at once. The blast wave hit Jack hard, but he had already dropped to the ground. The plasma passed over him, singing his hair but missing his body. When the smoke cleared, Jack stood up and ran through the now safe area. The crowd erupted in surprised cheers. Even some of the other warriors nodded with respect. "Clever," admitted Zarek, "but he won't last much longer. Look at him." Jack's uniform was torn and burned. Blood dripped from several cuts. His left arm hung at an odd angle, probably dislocated from the last blast, but his eyes were clear and focused. He kept moving. The finish line was in sight now. Only 50 meters to go. But this section had the most mines. They were placed so close together that there seemed to be no way through. The other warriors had used jump packs or teleporters to cross this part. Jack had neither. He studied the minefield carefully. Then he noticed something. The mines had a pattern. They pulsed with energy every few seconds. Jack waited, counting the pulses. 1, 2, 3. On the 4th pulse, he sprinted forward. He zigzagged through the mines, moving in the brief moments when their energy was lowest. It was incredibly dangerous. One wrong step would mean certain death. The crowd held their breath. Even the other warriors stopped to watch. Jack moved like a dancer, weaving between the deadly explosives. Sweat poured down his face. His breathing was ragged. But he didn't slow down. With a final leap, Jack crossed the finish line. He stumbled and fell to his knees, but he had made it. The arena erupted in chaos. Aliens shouted and pointed. The judges looked at each other in disbelief. Jack slowly got to his feet. His body was shaking from exhaustion and pain. But there was a small smile on his face. He had completed the first trial. Ambassador Thora floated down to the arena floor. She looked at Jack with new respect. "Corporal Bishop, you require medical attention." "I'm fine," Jack said, though his voice was hoarse. "When's the next trial?" The ambassador's 6 eyes widened. "You wish to continue? In your condition?" Jack nodded. "I didn't come here to quit, Ambassador. I came here to show you what humans can do." Around the arena, the whispers began again. But this time they weren't mocking. They were amazed. The fragile human had just changed everything they thought they knew. The second trial began 2 hours later. Jack sat on a metal bench, wrapping fresh bandages around his burns. The other warriors kept their distance, but they watched him with new interest. Some looked confused, others looked worried. Ambassador. Thora's voice filled the arena again. The next trial tests endurance. You must cross the Valley of Fire. The ground temperature reaches 200 degrees. The air is toxic. You have 4 hours to reach the other side. The arena floor changed again. This time it became a landscape of black rocks and glowing red cracks. Steam rose from the ground. The air shimmered with heat. Jack stood up slowly. His body ached, but he ignored the pain. He checked his boots and tightened the laces. Standard. Military boots, nothing special. They would have to do. The warriors lined up at the starting point. Most had activated cooling systems in their armor. Some had grown heat-resistant scales. Others floated above the ground to avoid touching it. Jack had none of these advantages. He pulled a cloth over his mouth and nose to filter the air. That was all the protection he had. The signal flashed. The warriors moved forward into the heat. Jack followed, placing each step carefully. The ground was so hot he could feel it through his boots. After 30 minutes, problems started. Jack's boots began to melt. The rubber soles stuck to the rocks with each step. He could smell burning leather. "The human's footwear is failing," announced one of the judges. "He cannot continue safely." Jack heard this. He stopped and looked at his boots. The soles were almost gone. His feet would soon touch the burning ground directly. Most warriors would stop here. It was the logical choice. Instead, Jack sat down on a hot rock. He pulled off his ruined boots and socks. The aliens watched in shock as he tore strips from his uniform pants. He wrapped the cloth around his feet, creating makeshift shoes. "Is he insane?" asked a Velian warrior. "He'll burn his feet off." Jack stood up and kept walking. The cloth protection was minimal. With each step, his feet touched the superheated rocks. The pain was immediate and intense. His skin blistered and burned. But Jack didn't stop. He had learned something in his years as a Marine. Pain was just information. It told you about damage, but it didn't control you. You could choose to keep going. The other warriors began to notice something strange. Despite his injuries, Jack's pace never slowed. He moved steadily forward, leaving bloody footprints on the rocks. Ambassador Zana watched through her viewing screen. "His vital signs are critical. Heart rate extremely high, body temperature rising, multiple second-degree burns. He should not be conscious, let alone walking." But Jack was doing more than walking. He was navigating the terrain, choosing the safest path. When he came to a river of lava, he didn't hesitate. He found a narrow point and jumped across, landing hard on the other side. The impact sent shockwaves of pain through his burned feet. Jack stumbled but didn't fall. He kept moving. Zarek had stopped to rest in the shade of a rock formation. His crystal body was resistant to heat, but even he needed breaks. He watched Jack pass by, limping but determined. "Human," Zarek called out. "Why do you continue? You're destroying your body." Jack paused and looked at the crystal warrior. His face was pale and covered in sweat. His eyes were bloodshot, but his voice was steady. "On Earth, we have places hotter than this. Deserts where the sand burns your skin. Mountains where the air is thin. Humans live in these places. We adapt, we survive." He turned and continued walking. Zureka watched him go, something like respect forming in his crystalline mind. The finish line appeared in the distance. Jack's feet were now raw and bleeding. Every step left red marks on the ground. But he didn't slow down. The crowd in the arena had gone silent. They watched this small, fragile creature overcome impossible odds through sheer willpower. Some of the judges were openly staring. With a final effort, Jack crossed the finish line. He collapsed immediately, his legs giving out. Medical teams rushed forward, but he waved them back. "Just need a minute," he gasped. He sat on the ground, carefully unwrapping the burned cloth from his feet. The damage was extensive, but he'd seen worse. The other warriors arrived over the next hour. They found Jack sitting calmly, treating his own wounds again. None of them said anything, but the way they looked at him had changed completely. The fragile human was proving to be anything but fragile. The combat arena was different from the other trial areas. It was smaller, with white walls and bright lights. Jack stood at one end, his feet wrapped in clean bandages. His left arm was in a simple sling. He had refused the advanced healing pods. The third trial is direct combat, Ambassador Thora announced. Each warrior will face an opponent. Victory comes through submission or incapacitation. A massive door opened on the other side of the arena. A Thraxian warrior entered. He was over 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and thick gray skin. His muscles bulged under his armor. The crowd cheered. Thraxians were famous fighters. The human draws Grom as his opponent, said the announcer. Grom has won 47 matches without defeat. Jack studied his opponent. Grom was bigger, stronger, and had more limbs. In a straight fight, Jack would lose quickly, but Marines didn't fight straight fights. The signal sounded. Grom charged forward like a truck. Jack waited until the last second, then stepped aside. Grom's momentum carried him past. Jack struck the back of Grom's knee as he went by. It was like hitting a tree trunk. Jack's hand went numb from the impact. Grom barely stumbled. The Thraxian turned and swung 2 massive fists at Jack's head. Jack ducked, but a third fist caught him in the ribs. The crack was audible throughout the arena. Jack flew backward and hit the wall hard. He slid to the ground, gasping for air. At least 2 ribs were broken. Maybe 3. "Medical team, prepare for extraction," called a judge. Jack pushed himself up using the wall. Every breath was agony. His left shoulder had popped out of its socket from the impact. He could feel it hanging wrong. Grom approached slowly, sure of his victory. "Stay down, human. You fought well for one so small." Jack looked at his dislocated shoulder. Then he looked at the wall behind him. The crowd watched in horror as he turned and slammed his shoulder against the wall. There was a sick crunch as the joint popped back into place. Jack's scream echoed through the arena. But when he turned back to face Grom, his eyes were clear and focused. "That's impossible," whispered an alien doctor. "The pain should have made him pass out." Jack reached into his belt and pulled out a roll of combat tape. Moving quickly despite his injuries, he wrapped it around his chest, binding the broken ribs. It wouldn't heal them, but it would keep them from shifting. Grom had stopped advancing. The Thraxian's 4 eyes showed confusion. "Why don't you fall?" "You are broken." "Not broken enough," Jack replied. He raised his fists. The fight resumed. Jack couldn't match Grom's strength, so he didn't try. He used speed and technique instead. He targeted pressure points and joints. He stayed close, where Grom's size was a disadvantage. Grom grew frustrated. His swings became wider and slower. Jack dodged and struck, dodged and struck. Each hit was precise, aimed at nerves and weak points. After 10 minutes, Grom was slowing down. His lower right arm hung limp from repeated strikes to the nerve cluster. His left knee buckled occasionally. Jack was in worse shape. Blood dripped from his nose and mouth. His vision was blurry in one eye. Every movement sent spikes of pain through his broken ribs. But he kept fighting. The end came suddenly. Grom overextended on a punch. Jack stepped inside his reach and drove his elbow into the Thraxian's throat. As Grom gasped for air, Jack swept his legs. The giant warrior fell hard. Before he could recover, Jack had him in a chokehold. It took all of Jack's remaining strength to maintain the hold against Grom's struggles. Finally, Grom tapped the ground in submission. The arena exploded in chaos. No one had ever defeated a Thraxian in hand-to-hand combat before. Jack released the hold and rolled away. He lay on his back, breathing hard. Every part of his body hurt. He probably had internal bleeding. Definitely had a concussion. The medical team rushed in again. This time, Jack let them scan him. Their readings confirmed multiple fractures, torn muscles, and organ damage. "He requires immediate surgery," the head medic announced. Jack sat up slowly. "After the trials," he said. "I'm not done yet." The medic stared at him. "You cannot be serious. Your injuries are severe." Jack stood, swaying slightly. "I've had worse." "When's the next trial?" Around the arena, aliens looked at each other in disbelief. The human had just redefined what they thought was possible. And he still wanted more. Jack sat in the preparation room trying to catch his breath. His body was a map of injuries. Burns covered his arms. His feet were wrapped in bloody bandages. His chest was tight with tape holding broken ribs in place. He had refused all alien medical treatment except basic scanning. "The fourth trial begins in 10 minutes, announced a voice over the speakers. "This is the psychological test. Warriors will face their deepest fears." Dr. Talana, a slim alien with purple skin and large black eyes, entered the room. She was the council's chief scientist. She looked at Jack with concern. "Corporal Bishop, your brain scans show severe trauma. Multiple concussions. You should not continue." Jack tried to smile, but it turned into a grimace. "I appreciate the concern, Doctor, but I'm finishing what I started." "This trial uses hallucinogenic gas," she explained. "It will make you see things that aren't real. In your damaged state, it could cause permanent harm." Jack nodded slowly. "I understand the risks." The doctor studied him for a long moment. "Why do you do this? Why suffer so much?" "Because someone has to show them," Jack said quietly. "They think humans are weak. They need to see what we really are." The trial chamber was dark and small. Jack entered alone, the door sealed behind him with a hiss. For a moment, there was only silence and darkness. Then the gas began to fill the room. It was invisible, but Jack could taste it. Sweet and chemical. His vision started to blur. The hallucinations came fast and hard. Jack saw his squad from Earth. Friends who had died in battle. Their faces were burned and bloody. They reached for him, asking why he let them die. "You're not real," Jack said through gritted teeth. But his heart was racing, sweat poured down his face. The scene changed. He was back in the desert on Earth. Enemy fire came from all directions. He could hear screams, smell burning flesh, feel hot sand in his wounds. His body reacted to the false memories. Old wounds seemed to reopen. His broken ribs felt like they were breaking again. Blood ran from his nose. In the observation room, the aliens watched Jack's vital signs spike dangerously high. "His heart rate is critical," Dr. Talana reported. "Brain activity is chaotic. He's reliving severe trauma." "Should we stop the trial?" asked Ambassador Thora. On the screens, they could see Jack stumbling around the chamber. He was fighting enemies that weren't there, dodging explosions that didn't exist. His movements were desperate and violent. But something strange was happening. Even in his hallucinations, Jack was completing objectives. The trial required identifying specific targets among the false images. Jack was doing it even while lost in his nightmares. "Target Alpha identified," he muttered, pointing at empty air. "Target Beta, 11 o'clock. Target Gamma behind the rubble." He was right every time. The gas grew thicker. Jack's hallucinations became worse. He saw himself dying, saw Earth burning, saw everyone he loved turn to ash. His body was failing. Blood vessels burst in his eyes. His nose bled freely. Several wounds reopened from the strain. "He's going to die," said Zarek, watching from the gallery. "No one can survive this level of psychological trauma." But Jack kept going. He crawled when he couldn't walk. He whispered target locations when he couldn't speak clearly. He finished the trial, objectives even as his mind fractured. "Just another Tuesday," he mumbled, blood dripping from his mouth. "Just another goddamn Tuesday." The trial ended. The gas cleared. Jack collapsed on the floor, shaking violently. Medical teams rushed in. "He's in shock," one medic reported. "Multiple systems failing." But Jack was conscious. His eyes found Dr. Talana in the crowd. "Did I pass?" he asked. The doctor checked her datapad. "Perfect score. You identified every target correctly." Jack managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. "Good. One more to go." "You cannot be serious," Dr. Talana said. "Your body is shutting down." Jack grabbed the nearest medic's arm. "Help me up. I'm finishing this." The aliens in the observation room sat in stunned silence. They had just watched a being push past every limit they thought possible. The human wasn't just durable. He was unstoppable. "What are they made of?" someone whispered. No one had an answer. The final trial arena was the most dangerous yet. Rows of plasma turrets lined both walls. The floor was made of metal grating with more turrets underneath. There was nowhere to hide. Jack stood at the entrance, barely able to stay upright. His body was failing. Burns covered 40% of his skin. His ribs moved with each breath. Blood seeped through multiple bandages. His left eye was swollen shut. Ambassador Thora spoke to the crowd. The final trial is survival. Warriors must reach the other side of the gauntlet. The turrets fire automatically. There is no pattern, there is no safe path. Zarek stepped forward from the group of warriors. This is madness. Look at the human. He can barely stand. Let him withdraw. With honor. No, Jack said. His voice was rough but clear. I finish what I start. The other warriors looked at each other. They had high-tech shields and armor. Jack had torn clothes and bandages. They were fresh. He was broken. The starting signal flashed. Most warriors activated their defenses and charged forward. Jack took a different approach. He studied the turrets, looking for something the others missed. The first plasma bolt hit him in the shoulder. The impact spun him around. His flesh instantly burned, black where it hit. The smell of cooked meat filled the air. The medical team moved to intervene, but Jack was already moving. He pulled a combat injector from his belt and jabbed it into his thigh. Stimulants flooded his system. Adrenaline compound, Dr. Tilana noted. It will keep him conscious, but the strain on his heart. Jack cut away the burned flesh with his knife. No hesitation, no screams. He applied wound sealant and kept moving. The aliens watched in horror and fascination. More plasma bolts flew. Jack dodged some, but not all. A shot grazed his leg, burning through muscle. Another hit his already injured arm. The flesh bubbled and charred. But Jack had noticed something. The turrets had a slight delay when switching targets. He began to move in short bursts, drawing fire, then changing direction during the delay. He's learning the system, said one of the technicians. That's not possible. The firing pattern is random. Jack's progress was slow and painful. Each hit took more of his flesh. Each step left blood on the metal grating, but he kept moving forward. Halfway through the gauntlet, disaster struck. A plasma bolt hit his chest, burning through the tape holding his ribs. The pain dropped him to his knees. The crowd gasped. This was surely the end. No being could continue. After such damage, Jack's head hung low. Blood dripped from his mouth. His breathing was wet and ragged. For a moment he didn't move. Then his hand moved to his belt again. Another injector. This one labeled with symbols the aliens didn't recognize. What is that? Asked Ambassador Thora. Military-grade painkiller, Dr. Tilana said, checking her scanner. Enough to kill most species. He's using it to stay conscious. Jack pushed himself up. His movements were jerky, unnatural. The drugs were fighting against his body's desire to shut down. He wrapped a tourniquet around his burned arm. The flesh was black and dead, but he couldn't afford to bleed out. Not yet. Step by step, he continued. More plasma hit him. His back, his legs, his remaining good arm. Each hit took pieces of him, but he kept going. The other warriors had finished the course. They stood at the exit, shields down, watching in disbelief as this broken human crawled toward them. 10 meters from the finish, Jack's legs gave out completely. He fell face first onto the grating. The crowd fell silent. Even the turrets seemed to pause. Then Jack began to crawl. Using his elbows and one partially functioning arm, he pulled himself forward, inch by inch, leaving a trail of blood and burned skin. The turrets fired again. A bolt hit his lower back. Jack grunted but kept crawling. Another hit his leg. He didn't even seem to notice anymore. With a final effort, Jack pulled himself across the finish line. He rolled onto his back, chest heaving. His body was more burny than skin now. No one spoke. No one moved. Jack looked up at the assembled aliens. Through cracked lips, he spoke 2 words. Trials complete. Then he closed his eyes and let the darkness take him. Jack woke up in a white room, soft lights, clean air, no pain. For a moment, he thought he had died. Then he saw the alien standing around his bed. Medical machines beeped quietly. Tubes ran from his arms to bags of fluid. His body was covered in healing gel that glowed slightly blue. "He's awake," said Dr. Talana. She moved closer, scanner in hand. "Corporal Bishop, can you hear me?" Jack tried to speak, but his throat was dry. Someone handed him water. He sipped it slowly. "How long?" he managed to ask. 3 days, the doctor replied. "You were in critical condition. We had to use emergency protocols." Ambassador Thora entered the room with several other council members. They looked at Jack differently now. No mockery, no confusion, something close to fear. "The council wishes to speak with you," Thora said. "Are you able?" Jack nodded. He tried to sit up, but his body was weak. Dr. Talana adjusted the bed so he could face them. "You completed all trials," Thora began. "No warrior has ever finished with such injuries. We need to understand how this is possible." Jack looked at his bandaged hands. "On Earth, we have a saying, pain is temporary, quitting is forever." "But the damage to your body," said another council member. "It should have killed you multiple times." Jack smiled slightly. "Humans are born on a death world. Everything on Earth tries to kill us. The gravity is heavy. The weather is violent. Animals hunt us. Even tiny organisms can destroy us from inside." Paused to catch his breath. "We evolved to survive, not by being the strongest or fastest, but by refusing to die." Zarek stepped forward. The crystal warrior who had mocked him at the beginning now looked humble. "I called your species weak. I was wrong, but I still don't understand. How do you ignore such pain?" "We don't ignore it," Jack explained. "We accept it. Pain tells us we're still alive, still fighting. In human history, we've survived ice ages, plagues, wars that lasted generations. We've lived in places so hot the air burns your lungs, so cold your blood freezes." He gestured to his injuries. This is just another challenge, another test to pass." Dr. Talana was reviewing her scans. "Your body produces unusual chemicals, under stress. Adrenaline levels beyond any recorded species, pain suppressants that activate automatically. Your cells continue functioning even when damaged. We call it human stubbornness," Jack said. "My drill sergeant used to say humans are too stupid to know when we're supposed to die." The council members looked at each other. They were beginning to understand something profound about humans. "Your military training," Ambassador Thora said. "Does it create this ability?" Jack shook his head. "Training refines it, but all humans have it. We've seen mothers lift vehicles to save their children, seen people walk miles on broken legs to get help, seen workers stay awake for days to save others from disasters." He looked around the room. "You tested a Marine today, but any human might have done the same. Teacher, doctor, farmer. When pushed far enough, we all find that place inside, that part that refuses to quit." Zarek moved closer. "This changes everything. If all humans possess this trait, then you understand why we earned our place here," Jack finished. "We're not the strongest species, not the smartest, not the most advanced, but we're the most persistent, the most adaptable." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The galaxy had just discovered that humans weren't weak at all. They were terrifyingly resilient. "What will you tell your people about us?" Jack asked. Ambassador Thora straightened. "The truth, that humans are not to be underestimated, that your species has mastered the art of survival itself." Jack leaned back against his pillows. Mission accomplished. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. "Good," he said softly. "Now about that advanced healing pod you mentioned earlier." The aliens laughed nervously. Even after everything, the human was making jokes. They were beginning to understand that this, too, was part of human nature. Finding humor in the darkest moments. It was perhaps the most unsettling trait of all. 2 weeks later, Jack stood in the Grand Council chamber. His body had healed, though scars covered his arms and legs. He wore his dress uniform, medals shining on his chest. The chamber was packed. Representatives from every species in the galaxy had come to witness this moment. News of the humans' performance had spread quickly. Ambassador Thora floated to the center platform. Today marks a historic moment. Never before has a species earned full military status in their first trials, but humanity has proven itself beyond all doubt. The crowd murmured. Some still couldn't believe what they had seen. Others nodded with newfound respect. Corporal Jack Bishop demonstrated not just courage but a trait we failed to recognize. Humans possess an ability to endure that defies our understanding of biology. Jack stood straight, despite the lingering pain in his rebuilt tissues. He caught Zirek's eye across the room. The crystal warrior gave him a salute. Therefore, Thora continued, the Galactic Council grants humanity full military membership. All restrictions are lifted. Human forces may serve alongside our own. The formal ceremony continued, but Jack's mind wandered. He thought about the message this would send back to Earth, how it would change humanity's place in the galaxy. After the ceremony, Zirek approached him. Corporal Bishop, I have a request. Call me Jack, he replied. What can I do for you? I want you to train my warriors. The Karathi need to learn human methods. Jack raised an eyebrow. You want me to teach crystal beings how to be more human? Not how to be human, Zirek clarified. How to think like humans. How to push past limits. How to turn pain into power. Before Jack could respond, other representatives crowded around. They all had similar requests: training programs, exchange officers, studies on human resilience. Dr. Talana pushed through the crowd. The medical division wants to study human biology, your healing factors, your stress responses. With your permission, of course. Jack looked around at the eager faces. These same beings had dismissed humans as weak just weeks ago. Now they wanted to learn everything about them. I'll need to check with my command, Jack said carefully. But I think we can arrange something. Later that day, Jack sent his report to Earth. The response came quickly. Humanity would share some knowledge, but keep their deepest secrets. They understood the value of mystery. Over the next months, Jack became the most requested instructor in the galaxy. His training videos were studied in military academies across known space. The footage of his trials became legendary. The term, human durability, entered the galactic language. It meant more than physical toughness. It described a mindset, a refusal to accept defeat. Some species tried to copy human training methods. They quickly learned that it wasn't about the physical exercises. It was about the mental attitude that humans developed from birth. Stories spread about other humans performing similar feats. A human engineer who worked 3 days without sleep to prevent a reactor meltdown. A human doctor who operated for 20 hours straight during a plague outbreak. A human pilot who flew a damaged ship home with half her bones broken. The galaxy began to realize that Jack wasn't exceptional among humans. He was typical. 1 year after the trials, Jack received a message from Zirek. The Crystal Warrior had successfully implemented human training methods. His warriors now pushed themselves, harder than ever before. We still cannot match human endurance, Zirek admitted, but we understand it better. We know now that humans don't ignore their limits. They acknowledge them, then choose to exceed them anyway. Jack smiled as he read the message. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humans weren't invincible. They weren't the strongest or the toughest. They just refused to stop. As Jack prepared to return to Earth, Ambassador Thora gave him a final gift. A recording crystal containing a message for humanity. Tell your people, she said, that they have earned not just our respect, but our caution. A species that treats catastrophic injury as inconvenience is a species to be honored, and perhaps feared. Jack accepted the crystal. We're not trying to be frightening, Ambassador. That, Thora replied, is what makes you so terrifying. Jack returned to Earth as a hero. But he knew the real victory wasn't his alone. Humanity had taken its place among the stars, not through superior technology, but through sheer determination to survive. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again.